Philadelphia, Mississippi.
And good morning. Welcome in. Tom Luginbill joins us on the Yuengling Lager guest line, National College Football Analyst with ESPN. You're listening to the Out of Bounds Show. And Championship Monday is always brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your car and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent in any of the 82 counties in the state of Mississippi. Tom Luginbill with us. Lugs, good morning. How are you on a Monday?
I am good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I was told during the break that you have your first game assignment of the year, and you'll be calling the Clemson-Georgia Tech game on Labor Day night?
Yeah, man. Yep, ESPN prime time. Great window, no competition. I think it's going to be a real interesting ballgame, especially with all the talk about, DJ Uiagalelei, and is he going to end up being able to hold on to that starting job? How accurate is he? They're a little bit of a mystery to me.
They really are. They'll be rolling out without Brent Venables. Phenomenal. We know he was a top 1% defensive coordinator. We'll see what he is as a head coach. But I don't know how many years it's been since he replaced Kevin Steele or whoever it was at that time, Lugs. But it's been a long time since Clemson's run out of the tunnel without Brent Venables.
Yeah, and it's not just Brent Venables too. It's also the offense.
Tony Elliott.
Tony Elliott, moves on to Virginia. And it's the one thing about Dabo Swinney. He's always done a really good job of maintaining that culture by grooming and training guys internally, so that when there is movement, he seems to really trust and hire from within. He did that on both sides of the ball, so I don't think we'll see a lot of differences from what we've seen before. But you're right. I mean, that is some veteran leadership on both sides of the ball that's leaving. They're going to be loaded on defense. They're going to be vastly improved, I think, in some areas on offense. For them, they gotta find out if DJ can actually do it. And that's concerning, because a year ago he threw 9 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, and the ball was going all over the place. And just to show you how talented Clemson is, they still won 10 games. And we're essentially non-effective at quarterback. So if they get that turned around, we could be looking at another college football playoff caliber team.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, so a new OC for our listeners and a new DC at Clemson. And the question is, can Dabo and Clemson do this, kind of recreate themselves again? Southern Cal couldn't do it again under Pete Carroll. Once they kind of had all that change. Urban couldn't do it at Florida. Mac couldn't do it at Texas. That's why we all look at Saban and go, wow, how do they continue to do it, shuffling all those people in and out of the building? But now Dabo is a special coach. But is the promoting from within the right way, or should you go hire the best on the market? This will be a great case study going forward for the Clemson Tigers. They play Monday night, ESPN against Georgia Tech. And Jeff Collins, who both Lugs and I know, Jeff's come through Mississippi State. He's got a great personality, engaging guy, heck of a recruiter, but he's at a place that, where Tom Luginbill played, Power 5 QB.
Yeah,
but they have not adjusted their deal academically at all, and they don't plan on doing so. They're a top 10 academic institution. And it's just, Lugs, it's an extremely difficult place to win. Wonderful university and academically incredible, but tough to win there in Atlanta.
Well, it is. And, I think that, it's been done, obviously, but this is, a roster overhaul that was severely interrupted by COVID. Let's not forget you're taking a 11-year run of the wishbone and speed option attack, and you're having to flip an 85-man roster, and then you have COVID, you've got the transfer portal, you got the 1 year of eligibility, and I don't think have been able to do it as smoothly or quickly as Jeff had anticipated doing so. And then on top of it, you lose your best player in the transfer portal in Jahmyr Gibbs, who's now at Alabama. And you seem to always be playing from behind. And then to top it off, their schedule is brutal. I mean, they play three SEC teams in their non-conference. Excuse me, two SEC teams in their non-conference, and then have UCF on top of who they've got to play in conference. So, I mean, it's just if they can somehow get to 5 or 6 wins, that'd be a vast improvement.
Wow. Yeah, he may not make it. I agree with you. That could be like a hell of a coaching job, and him not make it, Tom.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. The timing of it just may not have been what it needed to be, and then who knows if he doesn't pull through and he can't get it done. They decide to make a change. The next guy coming in there might be coming into a pretty decent situation. You never know.
That's true. Jeff has, for Georgia Tech, he's recruited pretty damn well. Tom Luginbill on the Yuengling Lager guest line. You just mentioned Central Florida. You know, Gus Malzahn goes from, you could argue, the worst job in college football in the shadow of the University of Alabama and Nick Saban in Auburn, even though they're committed and can win and all that, to Central Florida in a division where he always has the most talent. And that is not a bad kind of flip out of Auburn type deal. And, you know, I don't know if he'll end up back at a bigger school, but Central Florida is going to make the transition to the Big 12. You know, Gus is sitting in a good spot right now, Tom.
He's in a great spot, and at the timing of it couldn't be better. He won 9 games a year ago. They returned 9 starters on offense, 8 starters on defense. They've got it going on pretty good. They've been able to bring in some top level transfer portal guys. I mean, you look at Jarvis Ware that they brought in from Missouri. He was highly recruited. Terrence Lewis, the linebacker that originally signed with Maryland, was one of the top linebackers. He may have been our top linebacker 2 years ago. He comes back to the program. Now, you get John Rice Plumlee to come over. You fill the loss there left by Dylan Gabriel, who goes to Oklahoma. So as this roster is starting to develop and starting to grow, when they transition in to the Big 12, they're probably going to be as well equipped as anybody.
I wonder what John Rice Plumlee can do this year. I mean, just a freaky athlete who can make people miss, can start and stop on a dime, can get up and rolling. Had some really good moments as a freshman, got lost in the, at the wide receiver position, just needed more reps. And maybe now he is repped out enough. I don't even know what Central Florida has at quarterback, but repped out enough to where he can do some things because the dude can scoot when he gets the ball in his hands.
Well, I know this. If you followed Gus Malzahn and you've seen the trajectory and you've looked at the offenses he's coached, there is always a vast uptick in production when the quarterback is a runner. His offenses have not been the same when the quarterback is not a runner. And it doesn't mean he has to be the designated runner, but he has to be a part of the run game where you're forcing the defense to account for him. And whether it's been Nick Marshall, whether it has been Cam Newton, you go to all of you look at these guys, and when they were athletic, their offenses were really, really good. When he went to more of a traditional type guy, the offenses weren't the same. And I think that's an important thing to keep an eye on down there.
Okay, so he's competing for the quarterback spot at Central.
Yeah, with Mikey Keene.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he may win it. I mean, John Rice Plumlee may be the starting quarterback for Central Florida.
I mean, Mikey Keene threw 17 touchdowns, completed 64% of his passes last year as a freshman. They weren't expected to play with him. He played pretty good. So he's going to be in a battle, but let's just say the quarterback room as a whole got a whole lot better.
All right, I just saw this. QB battle heating up. This is going to be interesting to see what happens with John Rice Plumlee at Central Florida. Let's Tom Luginbill on the Yuengling Lager guest line. We'll switch gears here. What else do you think that we could see from Will Rogers? We take for granted that he's been playing a long time, but you're really not supposed to play your first 2 years in the SEC, especially if you're not at a blue blood. He's a true junior. He's gone through the, getting beat up as a freshman, played pretty damn well as a sophomore. And out of Mississippi, I was in Starkville over the weekend, and they believe they've got, even though it's not big names, they think their top 6 receivers are the best that they've had. All right, collectively. So, what do you think could be next for Will Rogers with the way he played last year, and really at times played really well, Tom?
Well, statistically, it's going to be no different than it's ever been for any quarterback that's played for Mike Leach. I mean, we can go all the way back to, Tim Couch at Kentucky, and then we can go to Josh Heupel and some of those guys at Oklahoma, and then of course all of the Texas Tech guys, and they just plug in, right? One guy comes in, throws for 4,700 yards, he completes 70% of his passes and 40 touchdowns. He plays for 2 years. The next guy comes in, does exactly the same. I think what's interesting about this team, because this team is going to have very little excuses. They went 7-6. They got 17 starters back. Right? I mean, this is and a lot of their starters are in all the right places. In their offensive line, they've got to replace both tackles, but the defensive front and front seven itself is completely intact. I agree on the wide out front. They've got a bunch of guys that play a lot of football, a lot of seniors too. Seniors. How many people are playing with 3 seniors at wide receiver in college football right now?
Right.
I mean, it just doesn't happen. So, and I know I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but if you're going to make the next step and you're going to be expected to beat somebody that maybe is better than you are, how do they get him some help on the ground? I mean, I think it can be as simple as that. How do we somehow force teams to not rush 3 and drop 8 all the time because they're not scared of us running the football? And that, you know what? I remember his second to last year at Washington State, and they had a running back, and the name's going to slip my mind. I think his last name was Williams. He was their leading receiver on the team, and he was their running back. And what they did is they just utilized him as an outlet guy. So if they weren't going to run it, and they were going to throw it all over the lot, and people didn't want to rush them, and they're rushing 3 and dropping 8, they take all their guys, run downfield, and then throw the flare route or the check down to this guy, and the next thing you know, he's in space, and you got to tackle him in space, and he gains 7 yards here, 8 yards there, 6 yards there, 10 yards there. That might be the secret ingredient that could be utilized.
Okay. Yeah, and they pulled Georgia from the East, which is for the second time in 3 years. So Leach is not what we call living right in the SEC. Kiffin is yet to pull Georgia and pulls Kentucky again. So for the second time in 3 years, Kiffin pulls the Vanderbilt-Kentucky combo. And I know Kentucky's better, but they ain't Georgia. And for the second time in 3 years, Leach pulls Georgia. And so that's going to be difficult. They start off with Memphis, Tom, and Memphis, it was a wild game last year. Memphis beat them. It was crushing for the team. And then they go to Tucson, Arizona with a new coach and staff. But bottom line is they have to start 2-0 because their schedule is so difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest with you, going into that Texas A&M game, they've got to be 3-1 or 4-0. Because if you look at the stretch starting on October 1st, it's A&M, Arkansas, at Kentucky, at Alabama before they get a bye and host Auburn and Georgia. So if they're not 3-1, 4-0, in fact, they need to be 4-0. They've got to get 4 there. They're going to get the breather of East Tennessee State on November 19th. But you're right, the early going, and the thing is, they should be with their returning experience and the type of team that they're going to have. Quite honestly, they're further ahead right now. They might not have as good a pure athlete as LSU does, but they might be a better team than LSU is, but they got to play them on the road, and that's always difficult, as we know.
All right, so that LSU game, because it's early, we all have confidence in Brian Kelly, but that'll only be the 3rd week there, and they may still be trying to figure some things out. You at least you're giving Mississippi State a shot to possibly go down, get in that game, hang around for a while, and maybe even win it.
Absolutely. There's no question. Because, LSU is going to still be, making adjustments. They're going to be, doing what they do as far as getting to know their team and figuring out, who's their quarterback going to be. Are they going to be playing more than one quarterback? Now, defensively, LSU is going to be loaded. Their front seven, everybody's back just about at the two deep level. So they're going to be pretty darn good on defense, and it'll be interesting to see if Mississippi State's able to go up and down the field on them.
And we still don't know what's going to happen there at quarterback. We've talked to you about it, whether it be Miles Brennan or Nussmeier or whatever, but that's going to be fun to see what hangs. Yeah.
Yep.
See, we've got a quarterback battle here with Luke Altmaier and Jackson Dart, and people automatically gave the job to Jackson Dart like February, whatever, whenever Dart and Trigg announced they were coming to Ole Miss. And he may win it in the next 2 weeks. Who knows? But Ole Miss is in a different spot, Tom, because it doesn't matter if I play quarterback their first, I think, 4 games. I think they're going to boat race all those teams. And I wonder if Kiffin's going to spend the better part of those first 4 weeks letting both Altmaier and Dart just rack up a ton of reps because they could be beating people by 17, 24, even more points.
Right. Yeah. Well, listen, it might be the smart approach to take too, and you keep both guys engaged, and especially Altmaier because you want to keep him around. And listen, it's easy to always assume when the high-profile guy makes a transfer, steps on campus, that he's just going to be the guy. And I think we're foolish when we do that, but it's easy. It's kind of human nature, right? Jackson Dart was highly recruited, extremely talented. And we haven't seen a ton of Altmaier yet. So I think you got to let that one play out a little bit because I would imagine it's a lot more competitive than people think.
Yeah. Look at this, Tom. Usually don't pull this in the SEC. Troy, who's evidently awful, and wow, they used to have a hell of a program. Central Arkansas, at Georgia Tech. We know Jeff's, battling. And then Tulsa. That's as good as it gets, 4-game stretch in the Southeastern Conference.
Oh, absolutely. But the thing is, you better take advantage of it because you're not going to get it. You can't slip up on any of those because you're not getting any favors on any of your other matchups.
Kentucky comes to Ole Miss for Game 5, and I know Stoops has done a really good job considering who they are. I think Ole Miss has got a chance to run them out of the stadium, Tom. I don't have any confidence in what Will Levis is talented. I don't have any confidence in what they'll do on the offensive side of the football.
Well, I'll tell you, if you flip over to the defensive side, if you want to talk about boat racing, Kentucky's going to have to revamp their entire defensive secondary. So they're going to have a bunch of new guys. Yeah. So they're going to
Kiffin will have a field day.
Right. And listen, that game is obviously super important because if you fast forward to October 15th, look at the run that Ole Miss has to go on. Auburn, at LSU, at Texas A&M, Alabama, at Arkansas, and then Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. I mean, give me a break. That is brutal.
Wow. Blake, what do you got?
You mentioned an interesting name there, Tom. Brian Harsin and Auburn have been a hot point of contention all offseason. How close do you think it really is to them going a different direction if things go south? Because I look at the Auburn schedule, and I look at that bye week right after the Ole Miss game, and I go, as easy as it is for Ole Miss up to that point, it might be doubly difficult for Auburn to that point.
Yeah, you're 100% correct, Blake. I think they're going to be a lot better than people think they're going to be. That's just my personal feeling on it. Doesn't mean that they're going to be a 10-win team, but I think every time we've traditionally seen Auburn step up and play pretty well, it's generally come on the heels of an off season where nobody's paying attention to them, or they're taking a lot of heat, and then they show up and they play pretty good. I'm kind of pushing my chips to the table that they're going to be, as a result of that, what I just said, they're going to be better. But there's just so much negativity swirling around that place, right? It's like, how do you get out from under that cloud? And Brian Harsin has handled things as probably as good as any one individual could. But at the end of the day, he's going to have to start winning a lot of games.
Who's going to be the quarterback that we're talking about in the SEC 5 or 6 weeks in outside of Bryce Young? Is it going to be Anthony Richardson? Is it going to be Will Rogers? Maybe one of the two out of Ole Miss? somewhere else. But if you had to guess, this is pure speculation, but fun. Who's going to have the buzz halfway through the season outside of the dude in T-Town?
Might be one of the two LSU guys. It might be Garrett Nussmeier or Miles Brennan. And I say that because I know they like Miles Brennan a lot, but Garrett Nussmeier a lot. But Miles Brennan, unfortunately, because of the injuries, and he had a freak thing happen. It was non-football related. It missed the entire year last year. But when he was their starter, all right, and started off the 2020 season, the guy threw 11 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in 3 games. And they were playing at Missouri, and they were rolling, and he got hurt. And when he went down, the whole thing crumbled. So I think there's something to that guy. If he stays healthy, there's something about him as a player. He's got some goods.
Oh. So isn't that crazy that we've got all these guys transferring within the conference, and we've got a lot of 1 and 1A, Altmaier and Jackson Dart. You mentioned the 2 at LSU. There's 2 at A&M. Haynes King, Max Johnson. Mm-hmm. Max Johnson from LSU. Haynes got hurt early last year.
That's going to be interesting. And then you got Connor Wigman, the true freshman there, that's going to be pushing those guys too.
Okay, so Jimbo signed a really good one.
Really good. Probably the best player out of Texas last year outside of Cade Klubnik.
Wow. Okay. Hey, and Napier's singing Anthony Richardson's praises.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Okay.
I think he's super streaky, and I want to see consistency. I want to see a guy. For a guy that has as much hype as he does and has played as little as he has, I don't know where that's coming from.
Napier and Anthony Richardson, and they start off with one of the most well-coached teams in college football in Utah, and Kyle Whittingham, former Urban Meyer disciple. Tom Luginbill on the Yuengling Lager guest line. Have a super week. We'll talk next week, buddy.
All right, buddy. You too. See you.
Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. He likes Mississippi State's front seven, and he likes Mississippi State's wide receivers. So there hasn't been the buzz coming out of Starkville as much as Oxford. But when you look at they've got everything coming back in the front seven, and the D-line needs to be super duper, really, really, really good for Mississippi State. But that's exciting. Now, I'm not as sold. I am sold. I think the D-line's going to be really good. They may not be great, and they don't have a Jeffrey Simmons, but collectively, they've got some dudes. Now, linebacker, I'm not, although here's the one thing. They played a lot. Depends on what you want to call Tyrus Wheat, linebacker, edge, whatever, but it's Wheat, Watson, and Jet Johnson, I think, out of Tupelo. We'll see if they've got some young guys that can push those guys too, but those are all veterans for the first time in a couple of years. And then you take their 6 receivers, especially the Georgia transfer and the Northwestern transfer. I think that's going to give Will Rogers some better options than he's had. Back for hour number 3 on the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN.